Chapter 2. Good Merchant, Bad Merchant. The archive. Harsh wind of the wastes beating against his shell. A disgusting, orange, sickly taste in his mouth. His nail in one hand. His nail on the shore of the blue lake. U'umu'u drifting through serene tanks of nonsense he can read. U'umu'u shrieking without sound, but he can hear it anyway. Monomon's gaze. 2 eyes dark with meaning he doesn't understand. Even now, as Quirrell tries to hold it close, the image fades, evaporating like mist over a hot spring. The ghost of warmth, without feeling warm. The drum of rain, the burble of running water, the fizz and hiss of acid popping, footsteps on a gravel shore. It's quiet here. Thank the gods for quiet. The sound of nothing at all is the most peaceful sound Quirrell has ever heard. His nail points down in the shore of the blue lake, a nail in the hand of his short, wandering friend. Blade out, held in challenge. That's blade in U'umu'u's rotten core. That's blade in Monomon's heart. Only silence now. His nail points down in the shore of the blue lake. A wanderer in a gray cloak, tiny, without age. A wanderer's hand held out. A wanderer's hand with a pure nail, challenge extended. Strange eyes going from nail on the blue lake shore to Quirrell. The nail won't come out of the shoreside any more. It is there to stay. Quirrell is here to stay. Only silence here. His nail points down in the shore of the blue lake, the rain below his feet. Here is the source of the wonder of the City of Tears. There are no more mysteries to be solved, and no more wonders to see, and no more fights to be had. A wanderer's hand held out. A wanderer's hand with a pure nail, challenge extended. A wanderer's hand with a strange, glowing nail. No, only silence on the shore of the blue lake. Quirrell will not go anywhere any longer. This is the most peace that Quirrell has ever known. And with luck, he thinks he can make it last forever. Quirrell opens his eyes, already knowing his dreams were only that, and that they will soon fade into the recesses of his mind, forgotten. The first thing he sees is a pair of inky black voids 3 inches from his face. Quirrell startles, reaching for his nail on instinct. A blanket slips off his shoulders, and his fingers find no metal. He is in a study, rain pattering on the glass window to his left, and directly in front of him is his short, wanderer friend. They stare up at him from their spot on the couch next to him, stoic as always, but for the first time, they reach out a hand and place it flat on Quirrell's face. Quirrell blinks, attempting to understand what they're trying to communicate, when a third voice chimes in.
All right, enough of that. Just because I let you back here doesn't mean you can be rude to my guest.
Slowly, the small hand strokes down Quirrell's face.
Maybe Quirrell is really dead. Maybe he's still dreaming. Ever since the infection, he supposes dreaming and dying aren't too different. The expressionless wanderer who'd never said a word to Quirrell in all their time together, who'd driven their nail into U'umu'u's heart, who'd fought the Mantis Lords and won, is definitely not stroking Quirrell's face.
No, they're definitely doing that. They're doing it again, even.
I said to leave it alone, Lem tells the wanderer grumpily. Your friend is here. He's even alive. I haven't cooked and eaten him either.
Satisfied, the small wanderer removes their hand, hops up on the bench, and sits next to Quirrell, as if this were any other bench throughout the rest of Hallownest, just a chance meeting on the wayward road.
No, you can't stay, Lem snaps. That's Quirrell's seat. This is the back room to boot, for me and my employees only. Customers stay out front where they belong.
The
The Wanderer looks pointedly at Quirrell, then back at Lem, as if Quirrell should somehow be an explanation for why the Wanderer will not remove themselves from this seat. Quirrell sits up properly and rubs the sleep out of his eyes. He's a special case, and just because you know each other doesn't mean you get the same rights, Lem says tartly.
I fell asleep on you in your own home, says Quirrell with a short laugh. How embarrassing.
Lem, for his part, is sitting exactly where Quirrell last saw him, at his desk with his eyepiece on, studying the same arcane egg from last night. Quirrell, in turn, is sitting exactly where Quirrell last remembers being, staring at Lem's shelves of Hallownest history, cold tea on a nearby table, except now he has a blanket half draped over him.
Ugh, don't act like it's such a huge bother, says Lem. All you did is sleep. This one, on the other hand, is a different story. This one saw me holding your nail and wouldn't leave my shop until I'd let them in. I'm assuming you two know each other.
Lem thinks about this. Otherwise, this is going to be very awkward.
No, we know each other, says Quirrell with an appraising glance at the Wanderer. Or so I would like to think.
The Wanderer looks up at Quirrell. The Wanderer's nail is sitting patiently in their lap. The Wanderer's nail in Uumuu's rotten core.
We've certainly seen each other around, at any rate, says Quirrell. I'm touched you came to find me. Monomon's tank empty and cold. But we should both be off. Lem, I didn't mean to fall asleep on you, and I apologize for my imposition, and thank you for your generous hospitality. But I've imposed too long as it is, and my imposition has only led to my short friend following suit. We should head back to the road where we belong.
Quirrell stands and scans the room for his nail. Like a true collector, Lem had placed the weapon in a spare holster, hanging properly on the wall and everything. Falling asleep with a weapon strapped to his side wasn't unusual, but having someone around who cared that it happened is extremely so. But as Quirrell stands, the Wanderer gestures wildly.
What is it?
Says Quirrell. The Wanderer pats the bench beside them with insistency.
I'm sorry, my short friend, but I'm afraid I don't follow,
says Quirrell, as if he doesn't understand a very clear and obvious attempt to have him sit back down.
I think
We're leaving now,
Quirrell interrupts Lem and picks the nail up from its holster. He turns around to see a Wanderer's journal in his face.
Well,
says Quirrell, looking at his short friend blankly.
What is?
Even as Quirrell looks at the journal, he can make out a few words.
Wastes stretch deeper, and the air noxious, then rumored, prepared, and acidity, melt a bug shell, the acid that reigned in my youth. This is from the fungal wastes?
Quirrell asks. The Wanderer puts the journal in his hand, and Quirrell examines it further.
Oh, I see. The acidity of the wastes climate must have risen since this record was written. Fascinating. I don't believe there's any other records of the time, so I can only take this long-dead Wanderer at their word, can't I?
Let me see that, says Lem, craning his neck over his desk. To Quirrell, that's 200 geo. To the Wanderer, don't play coy with me. If you've come to sell, I know you can do better than this.
200 geo?
Quirrell asks. The Wanderer points to the Wanderer's journal, then holds out a small bag of geo, presumably their wallet. They point inside.
Oh, you're mistaken, friend, says Quirrell quickly. I've only spent the night here. I haven't quite yet reached the level of working here. As it stands, I don't believe the relic seeker is hiring. If you'll excuse me, both of us should really be removing ourselves from Lem's personal rooms.
Something in the Wanderer's shoulders squares itself. In the next 2 minutes, Quirrell rapidly acquires a lot of information about his short wandering friend. Stoic, for one, strong he already knew, on a mission blessed by Monomon. Monomon's killer. And also, apparently, hoards half the debris of Hallownest somewhere under their cloak. Journals, tablets, shiny rocks, bits of bones, records made of weavered silk. Lem examines them all with an unimpressed noise. That's 50, he says occasionally to Quirrell, as if expecting Quirrell to somehow know where Lem keeps his geo to pay the Wanderer for their found wares. That one's 20. No, I won't go higher.
If you want more Geo, get better wares. Show me the king's idols, you little flirt. I know you've got them.
The Wanderer gives what seems like a full-body eye roll, rummages under their cloak, and finally holds up a king's idol, not to Lem, but to Quirrell.
Please, I already told you.
Wait! Lem cuts him off, standing for the first time since this conversation started.
Is that? No, even you couldn't have found this.
King's idols are already unspeakably rare. Owning one was a mark of the highest prestige before Hallownest fell. After, Quirrell doesn't quite know, and he isn't sure if he should remember. But he suspects their value only increased in the chaos. This particular idol is sharper than Quirrell remembers, and the king is holding his nail, points down, which is unusual.
Wait! The idol of the mad champion?
Quirrell blurts out. Lem turns to him, an excited grin emerging behind his beard.
Aha! I knew it. Those markings are too distinctive to be anything else.
Quirrell takes the idol from the Wanderer's hands, examining it carefully.
I can't say for certain, but the only idol he ever rewarded for prowess in combat certainly fits these design choices.
Lem nods.
And the only idol depicting the king armed. If I was a wagering bug, I'd say it's one of only a few depictions of him armed, period. For whatever reason, the king preferred his strength be shown in other ways.
Quirrell's mind whirs, dredging up the bits of history he's carefully curated and remembered.
Although he certainly wasn't above the usage of force, the Colosseum was his idea, according to the rumors I've heard.
Yes, but you'd have to factor in the tensions with the Mantis tribes at the time. The Mantises don't have a type of currency to this day, if I'm not wrong. Their conceptualizations of power are purely strength of body and strength of will.
True. In that context, the entire Colosseum was made in part to demonstrate the strength of Hallownest, to demonstrate that we could play the same game, but for geo and amusement. For sport. Effectively mocking the sanctity of the Mantis' sacred, more ceremonial combat.
Lem scratches his beard.
But what does that tell us of the champion herself?
There my knowledge fails me. I never met her myself. I only know the rumors that something about the series of events led to her feel tainted in her victory, and she ran off into the wastes beyond Kingdom's Edge.
If she did, she must have left us behind while doing it.
Quirrell and Lem glance back towards the Wanderer in the same instant, and they reply with a small shake of their head.
Wherever you found this, it is still a king's idol, says Lem, undeterred. I could hardly adjust my price now. 800 Geo, as always.
The Wanderer actually draws up to their full height, and does it with such gravitas that Quirrell wishes they weren't so painfully short, and glares at Lem. Again, with such gravitas that would have left a stronger impression if their face was capable of making expressions.
Lem, surely you can part with a little more geo than that,
says Quirrell.
We did just have a whole conversation about its importance in front of them.
Lem strokes his beard.
Must we? This could establish a bad precedent.
Perhaps, but perhaps not. After all, if rare items fetch a better deal, it encourages brave souls to find you rare items.
Yes, obviously,
Lem says, leaning back in his chair, fingers tented in his lap.
But is a single item that much rarer than any other king's idol? All king's idols have tails. None of those were worth a single geo more than 800.
Quirrell ponders, chin in hand.
But one so intriguing, from such a unique point in the history of Hallownest.
Fine. Twist my arm in the customer's favor. 850 geo.
Quirrell laughs. Only a 50 geo raise.
1,000 geo,
he replies.
1,000 Geo? Ludicrous,
says Lem in the tone of voice that tells Quirrell he knows it's completely and entirely rational.
900 and that's my final offer.
Final offer, he says, as if Lem could convince anyone for a second that he'd let such a king's idol escape his collection. Quirrell taps a single finger along the corner of his own smile.
950.
If you don't mind utterly devaluing such craftsmanship, that is. We both know that 1,000 was already too low.
925 and,
Lem turns, shuffles through his desk drawer, while Quirrell tries not to sigh at Lem's incorrigible stinginess, and emerges with a piece of wrought iron.
925 with this thrown in for free, and that is my final offer.
What is it? Quirrell leans in, but his initial impression is all he can glean. It's a piece of iron, incomplete but not broken. He can't make heads or tails of it.
Haven't the foggiest.
You're going to pay for a king's idol with 925 geo and a piece of junk, says Quirrell.
It's part of something larger,
says Lem, who almost doesn't sound like he's lying through his teeth just to save 25 geo.
And if this pale wanderer here brings back whatever it's part of, I can pay a little more.
By God and Worm, what does a bug need to hoard money so tightly for nowadays anyway? Quirrell turns back to the Wanderer. What say you? Is that acceptable, friend? The Wanderer thinks for a moment, looking at the piece of iron with the stillness Quirrell has learned to be their interest, and then nods. Well, if they're okay with it, Quirrell will find a way to be content with this highway robbery. A happy transaction for all, he declares, clapping. Now, Lem, where do you keep the Quirrell stops, runs through the entire exchange in his mind.
This wasn't right. When had he gotten comfortable? Wasn't he supposed to be on his way? What was he doing, acting like he belonged here? Here, in Lem's shop, in this foreign time and place, so long and far from the archives where he should have lived and died.
In the front, second drawer on the right,
Lem says, and hands off a key to Quirrell, who takes it with a distant, disembodied feeling.
You want to pay them geo so badly you can do it yourself. I'm going to go wrap up this whatever it is.
And Lem snatches up the iron, whatever it is, and whisks over to the far side of the room, where a set of wrapping cloths has been stored. Slowly, Quirrell takes the key and does as he's told. He goes to the front room, to the front desk, unlocks the second drawer on the right, and pulls out the cash box. And now Quirrell is behind the counter, like a proper cashier, with the key to the store's cash in his hand, about to do a goods for geo transaction. He stares at his own hand, like it belongs to someone else. It's as if he works here. The Wanderer pats the countertop. As if in a dream, Quirrell unlocks the cash box and counts out 925 geo, which disappears into the Wanderer's wallet, which in turn disappears under the Wanderer's cloak. Lem comes back with the iron piece wrapped in an old cloth and a leather string and holds it out to the Wanderer.
Careful of this, he warns. It's heavy and rather larger than you are.
The Wanderer takes the iron piece, which is nearly 2 headspans longer than they are, and slowly pushes it under their cloak, where it disappears completely.
Okay, says Lem. That makes sense, I guess.
The Wanderer points enthusiastically from Quirrell to Lem.
Ugh, says Lem, disgusted. That's true.
What?
You've even got the head for history, too,
Lem tells Quirrell, as if expecting Quirrell to have understood the very large memo he missed.
My collection has grown rather large, it's true, and I could use another pair of hands. Particularly a pair of hands that knows how to use a nail, what with how many infected husks think the City of Tears is prime real estate.
But seeing something on Quirrell's face, Lem's thoughtful expression shudders closed.
Just an observation. Don't mind me. I don't run your life. Take it however you like, or don't take it at all if you'd rather.
The Wanderer is not so deterred. If anything, something about their body language seems even more expectant. It is unfortunate, then, that Quirrell has long resolved to disappoint those expectations. It's a flattering observation, says Quirrell, but as I've mentioned, I really must be off.
In a rush to get someplace?
Maybe not a rush, but I've got to go. Any place in particular? Says Lem, as if he thinks Coral would openly admit to heading straight back to the Blue Lake if Lem asked.
Just elsewhere,
Coral replies. He puts the key back on the counter, pulls his nail from the hanging scabbard. But as Coral turns, something catches his hand. Wrapped around his finger is a strange, almost cool sensation, eerily smooth and entirely firm. Coral turns and is greeted once again by the blank face of the small wanderer. Now, Coral has never had the pleasure of truly holding a conversation with his short wandering friend. With bugs who don't speak, they usually sign. With bugs who can't sign, they usually gesture. With bugs who can't gesture, they use their expressions to at the very least communicate if they're happy, sad, upset, and so on. This tiny wanderer, in all the time Coral has known them, does not speak, nor sign, nor gesture, nor emote whatsoever. They can write, but they don't write anywhere but on their map. They can draw, but they've never drawn anything for art or pleasure. Coral's sometimes friend does 3 things, and 3 things very well: wandering, fighting, and silence. It's at this late hour that Coral realizes that the silence speaks more than anything they could possibly say. The silence of sharing a bench together on separate roads, the silence of the archives, the silence on the shore of the Blue Lake. What an odd and wonderful creature, Coral has thought, and still does now. What a vast and unknowable friend, if they are that at all. But at this moment, Coral has the distinct feeling that he may not know his wandering friend, but his friend knows him. In that moment, Coral is suddenly struck by how truly small the wanderer is. Every conversation they've ever had has been Coral looking down to meet their gaze, while they crane their neck to meet his. He knows they are capable, seen it firsthand in the path cleared after them, the archive littered with the dissolving bodies of Urumas. But in that moment, for the first time, all Coral can see is, they were all children. Long, gelatinous tendrils wrapped around a vial of words. The plan required only 1 child, and yet, like any project, a perfect iteration does not exist without the thousands, millions of other failed attempts. The failures, too, were necessary to the creation of the success, and it is equally necessary for the erasure of these many failures, for the success of the one. Inside the vial, a report written by Monomon herself drifts back and forth. A body count, a death toll, encased in fragile, breakable glass. Quirrell, dear, please get me a hammer.
The small, cool grip tightens. The wanderer's hands are so small that they barely wrap around the width of Quirrell's finger. Slowly, Quirrell hangs his nail back on the wall. Right, of course, says Quirrell, almost without thinking. You're still owed a fair amount of coin, aren't you, for the rest of the items? The wanderer nods. Their grip loosens, but only just. They don't let go completely until Quirrell wanders back in the direction of the cash box. Lem, Quirrell says, though the words feel as though they're floating out of his mouth. How much was our friend owed for the rest of their items?
2,065, Lem calls from the back. The wanderer taps the counter rapidly. Not a geo more! The tapping increases in ferocity and tempo. Don't give in! That's the exact amount, and you can't trick an old man with that nonsense! The wanderer huffs without noise. As Quirrell gathers up a truly ludicrous amount of geo once again, how on earth does Lem possess so much to begin with? He counts the geo by type and amount, straightening them into rows and piles, and watches the logic of a simple truth line itself up in front of his eyes. You've really taken a shine to my staying here, haven't you? Quirrell asks.
This time, he gets the stoic stare he's come to expect from his friend.
I suppose there is some benefit to staying in one place for a time,
says Quirrell. He pushes 5-piece geo into an orderly row, 10 pieces in another.
For one, you'll know where to find me and my aid, rather than wondering which bench I'll turn up at next. Am I right?
The pale head tilts, but eventually, as if unsure, and when is the Wanderer ever unsure? They nod. As Quirrell suspected, of course Lem and the Wanderer want him around. Even a person like Quirrell has some uses. He was knowledgeable before his memory returned, and handy with a nail besides. Now he's even more useful, considering the bits of memory that come back to him every so often. What sense is there in letting a perfectly functional nail go to rot on the beach, or an entertaining source of history trivia? So long as there are people who desire his skills, Quirrell will stay a bit longer. He will stay until they run out of use for him. Because Quirrell knows that they will, later if not sooner. What use could a broken down relic like him have, even to a collector of them? What use could an old half-excuse for a scholar or knight be in an age that has no place for either one? The archives are gone. Half of Quirrell's memories are too. U'umu'u is cut down. Monomon. When Quirrell puts the geo in the Wanderer's open wallet, the Wanderer looks up at Quirrell with a tilt of their head.
Then, if you insist, I'll give some thought to the relic seeker's suggestion,
says Quirrell at last.
This way, if you so desire my help in battle again, you will know where I can be found.
The Wanderer's head tilts the other way, with what might be a question, or maybe worry.
It's no imposition. I offer my help to you freely. Do not hesitate to call upon me,
says Quirrell.
I'm always happy to be of service.
The Wanderer deflates with relief. Quirrell smiles reassuringly, for once actually feeling reassured himself. Relic seekers like Lem or his wandering friend only keep relics of value after all. And Quirrell is not so conceited.